We'll give it just a few more minutes or just a few seconds here and see if more people join us. But thank you for taking time out and joining us today for our webinar series. You've got a few more people clicking in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for participating with us today. I'd like to introduce myself and my fellow presenters. I'm Wendy Fouth, Colorado Operations Manager for Processing, and I'm joined today by Morgan Bachman, our Colorado Operations Coordinator, and Rachel Zarowin, our Colorado Communications Manager. Today's focus is going to be on the local government and how, why, and when they participate in EPR's RFR process. On our next slide, we'll just walk through the legal disclaimers. Anything presented today is not intended to be legal advice and is informational only. And on the next slide, the antitrust reminder, just to keep in mind during the Q&A, please do not disclose any business sensitive information. And then our agenda, again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're going to do an overview of the local government RFR process, EPR in Colorado, timeline, the process details, next steps, and then we'll end with a Q&A session. So to start out, what is producer responsibility? Extended producer responsibility is a policy approach that shifts the financial and operational responsibility for the end-of-life management of a product from local governments and taxpayers to the producer. EPR laws for packaging and paper require producers, i.e. brand owners, retailers, restaurants, first importers, to either partially or fully fund the collection, sortation, and processing of the items they supply into these states. EPR dues structures can incentivize design choices that minimize waste and environmental impacts. The role of the Producer Responsibility Organization is a producer-led nonprofit organization that provides producers with compliance services to help them meet their obligations under EPR laws. A pro is responsible for developing and implementing a program plan for managing covered materials. And the plan is reviewed by a state-appointed advisory board and approved by the state regulatory agency. CAA has been selected as the pro in Colorado, California, Maryland, Minnesota, and Oregon. More states are in the various beginning stages of EPR implementation with such items as the needs assessments and rules making. Circular Action Alliance is a 501c3 nonprofit pro dedicated to implementing effective EPR laws for packaging and paper in the U.S. CAA was founded by companies from the food, beverage, consumer goods, and retail industries. The CAA has been approved to be the single pro in Colorado, California, Minnesota, Oregon, and Maryland. With that, I'm going to pass the deck to Morgan, and she will take us through the process.
Thanks, Wendy. Hi, everyone. So Wendy has given us the background on extended producer responsibility in general. So I'd like to continue by discussing how CAA intends to implement Colorado's producer responsibility law. So how EPR works in Colorado. So in Colorado, producers fully fund the cost of recycling for covered entities. So producers will actually start to begin paying dues this January, which is why what we're here to talk about today is even possible, which is reimbursements through the local government RFR. CAA's initial focus for recycling at no cost is residential covered entities, and by that I mean single family and multifamily homes. Non-residential entities, which includes schools, government buildings, hospitality, public places, and small businesses, come into scope into the program in 2028. And then as you can see on this diagram, there's some yellow boxes. That is what's funded through this program. So education and outreach is funded through the program. Collection, transportation, and processing of covered materials is also funded. A compost facility that accepts compostable packaging along with other organics is also eligible for funding, specifically for contamination management. And then lastly, you'll see responsible end market, or REM. That's the final destination for recyclables, where they are processed and turned into something new in a safe and legal and effective manner. Okay, so quick update on where we are on the path to plan approval. We are currently in this last CDPHE review stage. This is expected to last until mid-December, and that is when a final decision will be issued by the state regulator, CDPHE, on whether to approve the plan. The Colorado Producer Responsibility Advisory Board recommended approval of the amended program plan on August 13th. And following approval, when that official approval happens, which again is planned for mid-December, CAA has 6 months to begin implementation. Please visit CDPHE's EPR site for the amended plan, and my colleagues, if I don't put them on the spot, they might be able to drop a link to the plan in the chat for anyone who has not seen that. Okay, and then how implementation begins. This is a great graphic to explain how this process begins in Colorado. So just like big picture, CAA's program plan lays out a strategic approach to more than doubling recycling rates for packaging and paper statewide. So there's several different key areas of action that are included in this. The first one is reimbursing for existing services. Local governments will receive funding to support and maintain current recycling programs. We're going to talk a lot more about this today. You will also be boosting participation where access already exists. So we're going to be investing in outreach and other incentives to increase participation in communities that already have pretty good access to recycling. We'll also be building capacity in underserved areas. So funding that will help expand infrastructure and services to regions and populations that currently lack reliable recycling options. And then the last area is enhancing systems and recycling more items. So supporting upgrades to recycling systems, technologies, enabling the collection and processing of a broader range of materials. So really the vision for 2030 is no matter where you live in the state, recycling in Colorado is as convenient as trash pickup. So that means equitable access, streamlined processes, and just generally making recycling an easier choice. And so local governments are a really key partners in this transformation. Thank you all for being here today. I'm excited to talk about the content we have for you. Participation in the RFR process is the first step to unlocking all of these benefits for your community. Cool. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over high-level overview and timeline of the local government RFR. I'm going to throw some dates at you. We're going to go over the general process, and then I'll get more into the weeds of the individual steps. Okay. So just so we're all on the same page today, a service provider means a public or private entity that provides recycling services in the state of Colorado. So this means that local governments delivering recycling services, either directly to your residents or via contracts, are considered service providers. And the local government RFR reimburses 3 main activities: collection, recycling collection. That includes municipal fleets, if you own, if a city owns their own municipal collection fleets, or if you contract recycling collection via a service agreement with a private hauler. Also reimbursed through the local government RFR are drop-off centers, as well as education and outreach activities. There's going to be an allowable list of activities. Now, we do understand there may be some local governments on this call actually that operate a MRF, an IP MRF, or a transfer facility. Those items are reimbursed through the processor RFR. So if you are a local government on this call that operates one of those three facilities, in addition to the local government RFR, we're going to want you to also additionally check the processor option on the interest form. Remember that term interest form, I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. But you should be checking both the local government RFR and the processor RFR on your interest form. And just for anyone that may be wondering, an intermediary processing MRF, that's a little bit of a lingo-y term. It's sort of a combination between a MRF and a transfer facility. There's kind of both of those things happening there. So if that applies to you, please take note. You may be eligible for the processor RFR as well. Okay. So what does this process entail? So there's 3 steps. The first step for local governments is called the service profile. So this initial step allows CAA to learn more about each community's current services and also assess any needs or gaps in Colorado's recycling system. So service providers, which is you all, local governments, you'll be asked to complete an interest form. You'll be able to sign into the service provider portal, and you'll also submit some initial documents, including a service profile. Step 2 is the application. So this stage, local governments, you'll provide more comprehensive details about the services that you offer. So that includes operational data, net costs, and confirm that you have the ability to meet service standards and a couple other things that will go more into depth later. The last step is the service agreement phase. So this is the final step of the process, and it's where we'll be executing a service agreement, which is a multi-year contract between CAA Colorado and each local government. And then once the service agreement is executed, local governments will work with CAA on an ongoing basis to provide activity reporting and also be involved in invoicing through the service provider portal. Okay, I'm going to hang out on this page for a little bit, so feel free to take this in. These are some important deadlines. So this timeline that you're looking at is the key deadlines for local governments, as well as processors, open market providers, and compost facilities to participate in the producer responsibility program. We are going to be releasing these other RFRs at different points in time, as you can see. But before I go into any of these dates, I just really want to note that these dates that you're looking at are applicable to local governments that want to remain eligible for the earliest reimbursements. And so at the earliest, reimbursements may occur for activities that are conducted in June 2026, pending a fully executed service agreement. So let's go through some of these milestones. The first is actually a week ago from today, November 17th, the RFR opened for local governments. You can begin the process. This phase is going to continue into 2026. On January 16th, that is going to be the last day to complete step 1. So you'll want to complete all of the items that we'll go into in just a moment that are included in step 1 of the service profile. It's called the service profile again. And then on February 13th is when step 2 opens. That is the application phase. That is going to run through April 13th, so about 2 months. That will be the last day to submit step 2. And then again, as of June 2026, that is when CAA anticipates the earliest service agreements will be executed. And then July 2026 and onward, there will be ongoing service agreements and reimbursements that are happening and established on an ongoing basis. Okay, now, like I imagine the first question that may be in a lot of your minds right now is, what if I miss one of these deadlines? Local governments that miss any of these initial deadlines that we're looking at here are still eligible to receive reimbursement. You are not knocked out of the process by any stretch. Just please note that requests for reimbursement that are initiated after these due dates will be evaluated in the order in which they are received, and service agreements will be phased in on a rolling basis. So we will announce details of how this ongoing local government RFR will operate at a later date. But if you would like to remain eligible for those earliest reimbursements, these are the dates to keep in mind. And then I'm not going to go into details of the other RFRs. That's not what we're here to talk about today, but just please note that if your local government is eligible to apply for the processing RFR and you operate one of those facilities I mentioned on the other slide, that actually opens 1 week from today on December 1st. So you are almost ready to start that process if that applies to you. Okay, so just some key takeaways here before I leave this slide. Please, to remain eligible for those earliest payments, please meet these deadlines and start early, submitting the service profile and the application on time, at least on or before the dates you see on this slide, ensures that your community remains in that first wave of local governments that receive reimbursement and reach a service agreement first. And then there is a QR code if you haven't scanned it yet at the top right. That's going to take you to CAA's website that has a bunch of helpful information, guides, forms, support, various things. And we just encourage everyone to please reach out with questions well before these deadlines. We don't want anyone to run into last minute issues that then push you back, behind a delivery date here. So just some tips to ensure your success there. Okay, I'm going to leave this slide. And we will now go into some details. So I'm going to actually take you through sort of a kind of a walkthrough of the local government RFR, and really emphasizing what data to have ready and how to prepare for this process effectively. Okay, again, step 1 is the service profile. This is that phase in which you tell CAA that you are interested in reimbursement, and you also introduce your community's recycling system to us. Okay. First step, the interest form. This is this is a 5-minute online form that is for authorized local government representatives. What is an authorized representative? Okay, that's going to be someone who has authority to act on behalf of a local government. Now, most often this is going to be a local government employee that maybe oversees recycling or waste or maybe public works or sustainability initiatives. But it could also potentially be a grant coordinator or a city administrator or a town clerk or maybe a finance department personnel. So the ideal registrant is going to, we anticipate it's going to vary based on the way each local government is structured. But ultimately, the key thing is we're seeking registration from those who have legal authority to represent a local government. And what this interest form is doing is you're basically expressing interest in working with CAA. So you're saying, hey, I want to work with you. I'm interested in reimbursement. Let's get into your system. And you'll also receive login credentials for the service provider portal. I'll talk about this in a couple of slides as well. So that's why this is important. It gets you into our system and we'll have a common place to work together and share documents. And then this link, so the link to the interest form is already live on CAA Colorado's reimbursement webpage. There's also a QR code that I'm going to display at the end of the deck if you want to go right there after the presentation today and fill out your interest form and get into our queue, which I very much hope some of you do if you are not already. And then the last thing I'll note about the interest form is there may be a little bit of a delay between when you submit your interest form and when you receive your welcome invite to the service provider portal. You can expect to receive a confirmation of receipt and that invitation to join and set up your login credentials within 2 days of when you submit the interest form. The reason why is because behind the scenes CAA, we're validating all these interest form submissions that are coming in prior to sending the invitation to, again, make sure that the person who is applying is an authorized representative of the local government. So that's why there's a little bit of a delay there. So there's no need to submit another interest form unless you feel like it really didn't go through for some reason, but there's a confirmation screen at the end when you submit that will confirm that your submission has been received. And then we will send you those login credentials within a couple days. Okay. And then just a tip for success on the interest form. So we've received feedback from some of our earliest interest form submitters that this particular question on the interest form might actually cause some confusion. So if you are on this call and you're a local government representative of a local government in Colorado, to apply for Colorado reimbursement, please indicate that you are interested in participating at the state level. Then you'll be able to select Colorado as your state and choose the local government RFR and the processor RFR that's applicable to you. It's a little bit weirdly worded. I understand that. The national level actually goes into a different queue. And so please make sure you're selecting the state so then you can choose Colorado and local government. Hopefully that helps. Okay. And then after the interest form, again, you'll get that invite to log into the service provider portal. This email is going to come from serviceproviders.support@circularaction.org. You're going to want to follow the welcome instructions in that email to log into the service provider portal. And then the service provider portal is where you'll access and submit key documents for the reimbursement process. And eventually, this is actually the location of where you'll upload activity reports. And so this is, so you're getting into our system early, and this is the central place where we'll be able to work together and, again, share documents. Okay. And then the service profile. So this is we're estimating about 30 minutes, hopefully less for most folks. This is a fillable PDF questionnaire in which you basically outline your community's recycling system. So you can provide key contacts in your local government. There's something in my throat. 1 second. You can outline your contract approval pathway, and you can also tell CAA about the waste and recycling infrastructure that may be in your community. And then something we really want to drive home is that all local governments in Colorado are encouraged to complete the entirety of step 1, including if you don't actually directly provide recycling services, or if you don't have any recycling services available today. The service profile allows local governments to access education and outreach payments, and it helps CAA Colorado assess recycling system gaps. As you can see, I don't usually talk this much, so my throat is dying. Sorry, everyone.
Say the word if you need anything, Morgan. We
Thank
got,
you.
we got you. We
Um,
got you.
so again, it allows you to access the E&O payments, and it also helps CA Colorado assess recycling system gaps. And how this works is you'll go into the service provider portal and download a document that is in the library documents section. That's going to be the template, the fillable PDF template. And you'll download that from the service provider portal and you'll fill it out. Make sure you save as you go so that your progress isn't lost. And then once you have completed and especially completed all the required fields, you'll be able to upload the completed file back into the portal. And again, similar to the interest form, there may be a slight delay between when you submit your service profile and when you receive confirmation from CAA. So again, maybe up to 2 business days from when you submit that document to when you receive confirmation. And the reason why is because CAA Colorado, again, validates the submissions to make sure that they're complete before we send you that confirmation. So just bear with us and we will confirm receipt with you to make sure you know that we have gotten your form. Okay. And then another tip for success in the service profile. Again, from some early responders to the service profile, who we really appreciate. Thank you if any of you were on this call. There are several notes on the service profile that contain really important guidance for this form. So please, please, please review them to ensure that you are successful in filling out this survey. Here are a few on the screen just to like illustrate this point. But basically, so just as a couple like important notes here, if you are responding on behalf of a county, any county respondents, you should answer the questions as they apply to only the unincorporated areas of your community. And then also based on the way that you respond to questions in the form, some questions actually might not apply to you. And so the answer fields are actually going to be disabled. So don't be alarmed if you see that. That is intentional and is intended to guide you to answer the questions in the most effective way. And then also in section 2, I'd like to call out this definition section. Section 2 asks you to describe current recycling services that your local government may provide. And so in section 2, at the top of section 2, we have this definitions box. This is going to define each recycling service. That includes recycling collection, recycling drop-off center, and community education and outreach. You can refer to these definitions as you complete section 2 to make sure that you're responding to section 2 effectively. There we go. Okay. And then that is the completion of step 1. We'll move into step 2, which is the application next. So step 2, again, is the phase in which you will provide detailed operational and cost information to CAA for the recycling services that are eligible for reimbursement. There you go. And so one of these pieces of the application is operational data. So during the application, you'll provide operational details about your reimbursable recycling services. And again, we're talking about collection, drop-off, and education and outreach. So just as an example, some of the info that CAA might ask for includes household service, including like single family and multifamily, service frequency, how often you're at those homes, some information about your containers or your fleet, if those things apply to you, a cart inventory or drop-off volumes, just as an example. We'll also ask you to report net costs of recycling. And so what that means is CAA will ask you to report net recycling costs of eligible recycling services. Those are going to need to be presented separately from other waste management expenses. And so examples of net costs, they might include operational expenses such as labor, fuel, maintenance, insurance, utilities, and administrative costs. They could also potentially include capital costs, and that is generally going to be represented by the amortized value of your equipment, like trucks, signs, facilities, and collection containers. And then depending on the specific cost, you may also be asked for totals or a per unit cost, such as a per household cost, as an example. Okay. And then we also have service standards are included in the application. So on or before the start of an agreement with CAA Colorado, each local government will need to confirm its ability to meet and uphold minimum service standards. So depending on the services that your local government is providing, these standards might include things like insurance coverage, you're meeting certain customer service benchmarks, you are doing base education and outreach to your customers, i.e. your residents. You are able to collect items on the MRL, which is the minimum recyclables list, in a timely manner. You are able to follow certain driver and worker safety protocols. You're meeting environmental compliance standards, and also appropriately recording, have appropriate record management practices as well. And then the last part of the application, again, also during the application, we will want you to demonstrate that you have capability to both monitor and report to CAA on key performance and financial data. So tracking and reporting categories could include things like material-based metrics, like tons and types of materials that you're collecting. It could be service-based metrics, like the number of households served or the number of non-residential entities served. There may also be financial reporting standards, like service cost per household. And really, the intention of this is to ensure accurate reimbursement and reliable program oversight. Really, the intention of the application as a whole is to ensure that we are understanding the operations of your services and making sure that we are providing a effective reimbursement and also program oversight. Okay. And then the last phase is the service agreement. So again, this is the phase in which you will formalize reimbursement terms and also execute a contract with CAA Colorado. Okay. And then so a service agreement with CAA is a multi-year contract for reimbursement. And this is going to be an agreement that both parties have agreed to and signed off on. So CAA and each local government. Included within that multi-year contract is a master service agreement, or an MSA. The MSA is providing consistency and accountability and transparency between CAA and service providers, i.e. local governments. It's a standard set of terms and conditions that sets a framework for the formal relationship between the local government and CAA. And ultimately, it protects both parties because we're setting clear expectations about like reporting and payment and compliance. And it's just a framework that will apply to all contracts, all local government contracts. And then also included within the multi-year contract is a statement of work for each recycling service that you provide. So if you have a municipal fleet and you also run a drop-off, there will be 2 statements of work associated with your service agreement. The statement of work the intention is it goes into the operational specifics of your service that you provide. It provides it infuses specification like routes and facilities and reimbursement rates and performance metrics into the agreement for that specific service. And I'll also just note here that the draft local government service agreements will make those available for public consultation. We're estimating that's going to be in or around January 2026. So keep an eye on our website for more information on that. Okay, and then some other general tips for success. As always, we'll point you to the program plan. Specifically, if you don't want to read 180 pages or something like that, we would love to encourage you to focus on Chapter 6. That goes way into detail about the local government RFR and all the processes and expectations there. If you haven't already, it'd be really helpful to identify a primary point of contact for the RFR process. Someone at your local government that can be the go-to for the documentation and just the process and the communications from CAA. You are going to be actually asked for this person in the service profile. So if they're not already identified, we encourage you to do so. We also, if you are in a position in which you have contracted out services to a contractor or a hauler or just some kind of private service provider, we encourage you to align early with those entities and start to gather required data from them. We also encourage everyone to whitelist, which means like add them to your contacts or add them as a safe sender. The service providers.support email address. We're noticing some of our emails aren't going through to their intended recipients. And maybe they're getting caught up in filters or whatever it may be. So please go ahead and whitelist this address because you're going to be receiving confirmations and communications about your documents through this email address. CAA has made some resources available to you. There is an exceptional local government RFR guide that is available. And then we also have a bunch of resources, various things on our website as well. So please check those things out to make sure you feel supported. And please, again, email us early with questions. Here is our team email address, coloradoinfo@circularaction.org. That's going to be a great place to get answers to your questions if you're having any difficulties or need any clarification on any of the parts of the process. And then just a few final takeaways, and then we'll transition to Q&A. So here's a little mini checklist for you for the local government reimbursement process. One is go ahead and submit the interest form. Start the local government RFR, get into our system, start the process. We encourage everyone, again, regardless of your whether you currently provide services or whether you contract them out, we encourage all local governments to apply and at least complete step 1. So please go ahead and submit your interest form. Also, we encourage you to start preparing for the application. I mentioned this in a previous slide, but you can start to gather key data. You can start looking at your costs if they're not already isolated and seeing how you may be able to isolate net recycling costs. And if you are a local government that operates a MRF, an intermediary processing MRF, or transfer station, my colleague Wendy will be hosting a processor RFR webinar next week on December 2nd. That's going to have a lot of great information about the beginning stages of the processor RFR webinar. Okay. And then last thing is there is 2 QR codes on the page. The left one is you can scan that right now and go to the interest form and submit the interest form. Again, that's a 5-minute form. It'll take you just a couple minutes. go ahead and scan it if you're an authorized representative of a local government and you haven't already submitted an interest form. Please go ahead and get in our queue. The QR code on the right is going to take you to our events page. You can register for our future webinars or the processor RFR in particular, the one that's coming up next week. And then, of course, our email address again for if you would like to contact us with questions or to schedule one-on-one time and work through any questions that you may have. And I believe that's it. I'm going to pass it over to Rachel to take us into Q&A.